Welcome to this explainer. Let's start with a million-dollar question, right? How does a massive global enterprise actually stop a single, unauthorized purchase from completely draining its resources? I mean, when you've got thousands of employees wanting to play in the corporate sandbox, relying on the honor system, yeah, that just isn't going to cut it. So, the answer actually lies deep within SAP's procurement system. Today, we're going to explore the highly technical rulebook for the release strategy of purchase orders. It's honestly fascinating to see exactly how a system is built from the ground up to mathematically enforce a company's purchasing rules. Real quick, here's our agenda for today. 1. Controlling the procurement process. 2. PR versus PO procedures. 3. Step 1. Creating characteristics. 4. Step 2. Defining classes. 5. Step 3. Release procedures. And finally, 6. Final approval and execution. Let's get right into it. Section 1. Controlling the procurement process. According to our source manual, a purchase order isn't just sent straight out to the vendor. No way. It requires strict approval to avoid any unauthorized transactions. You can really think of the release strategy as the ultimate playground monitor, It literally halts a purchasing document right in its tracks until the exact right people sign the permission slip, which prevents some major financial headaches down the line. Section 2. PR versus PO procedures. Now, before we build anything, we have to talk about the difference here. A purchase requisition, or PR, is strictly an internal document. It's kind of like passing a note in class. It can actually be released piece by piece at the item level. But a purchase order, a PO, that's external. That's like mailing an official letter to another school entirely. Because of that, it can only be released at the header level. You literally can't send half a PO to a vendor. It's a strict all-or-nothing rule. Check out this table. Notice the total separation of our database tables and transaction codes for these two documents. A PR lives over in table CEBAN and uses T-code ME54N. But for our journey today, since we're focusing entirely on purchase orders, we're going to be playing strictly in table CEKKO and using T-code ME29N. Moving on to Section 3. Step 1. Creating characteristics. Okay, so building this from scratch requires an exact 3-step roadmap, and it all begins right here with characteristics. These define the specific boundaries that actually trigger an approval in the first place, things like the plant, the purchasing organization, or the total value. And we build these using the T-code CT04. Look at how our very first characteristic, the plant, ties directly into the system's back-end architecture. Right there on the screen for T020_plant, you can see it's mapped directly to table CEKKO, and specifically to the field WERKS. This essentially tells SAP exactly where to dig in the sandbox for data the moment someone tries to make a purchase. Now, here is a fantastic pro tip straight from the manual. By selecting multiple values under value assignment, a single release strategy can actually apply to several different plants at once. So instead of building 50 different rules for 50 different playgrounds, you just group them together. That saves a massive amount of configuration time. All right, Section 4, Step 2, Defining classes. We achieve this grouping we just talked about by defining a class. In this specific case, T020_class. The absolutely crucial detail here is the class type. We absolutely must use class type 032. SAP specifically reserves and recognizes 032 strictly for release strategies, no exceptions. Take a look at the char.tab right at the bottom there. This is where all those isolated puzzle pieces we just built, the plant, the order type, the value, are successfully packed into one unified toy box, our master TO20_class. Now, they are totally ready for the final configuration step. Which brings us to Section 5, Step 3, Release procedures. Okay, this is where the magic really happens. First up, we establish a 2-digit release group labeled ZP, and we link it to our class. Then we define our release indicators. It's essentially a high-stakes game of red light, green light. We set B for blocked, that's giving the red light, and R for released, the green light, meaning absolutely no further changes are allowed. To actually enforce the corporate hierarchy, we have to generate specific 2-character release codes. These codes represent the actual users who hold the power to approve or reject a document. We're essentially building a tiered security climbing frame here. T1 for the end user, T2 for the associate, T3 for the manager, all the way up to T4 for the director.
Then, those specific user codes are mapped to strict monetary intervals. So, let's say it's a €400 purchase. That only needs a T1 approval, totally skipping the executive suite. But a €2,500 order? Boom. That automatically triggers the system to demand the T4 director's hall pass before a single cent is actually spent.
For strategy T4, which covers that maximum €2,001 to €3,000 range, we drop in all 4 release codes. This forces SAP to enforce a cascading sequence. It requires T1, then T2, then T3, and finally T4 to fully unlock the document. It's built right in. Section 6, Final Approval and Execution. So what does this actually look like? Here's the final result. Using T-code ME29N, the director logs in and sees the cascading approvals lined up like a relay race. T1, T2, and T3 have already passed the baton. The director applies that final T4 approval, and instantly, the status indicator flips to that incredibly satisfying green checkmark. Purchase order 45,024D723 is officially unblocked and sent securely on its way to the vendor. We've seen just how elegant and strict this process is when it's built correctly. But this leaves us with a pretty critical thought to end on. Considering the immense, restrictive power of this digital checkpoint, how disastrous could one tiny typo in the back end actually be? Think about it. Just one wrong field assigned back in step 1, and an entire global enterprise's purchasing pipeline grinds to an absolute halt, kind of like one broken swing shutting down recess for everyone. It truly highlights just how vital the role of a system administrator is in all of this.